Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Let me tell you a little bit about our guest who's joining us live. First of all, Chris Jones is the author of The Prism, and we're going to go more into that when we bring him on in just a second. Chris Jones, he's presently, I'm going to give you a quick short bio. He presently lives in England on the agricultural borders for Hertfordshire and Essex, splitting his time as a volunteer care worker with his love for reading, writing, meditation, and learning how to sketch faces and portraits. Very cool. He is a life member of the Friends at Stansted Hall and a member of the White Eagle Lodge in Liss, Hampshire. He is currently working on a follow-up book to The Prism called Procession and Resonance, and I think I have a feeling what that book might be about. Anyway, without further ado, let me welcome author Chris Jones to the Just Bernard Show. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Bernard. It's lovely to be here.
And you are in England. You're joining us live from England right now?
Yeah, that's right. We've got the most stunning full moon tonight. And really what I've got to say about what you're saying with the changes that you're making and the new seeds that you're planting with going forward. What a brilliant time it is to be doing that while you've got this fantastic full moon tonight.
Oh, I didn't even think about the moon. And we have a star coming up in a few weeks, so that'll be great too.
Yeah. It's a great time to be planting new seeds.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So
yeah.
You're in England. Are you in the area of Hertfordshire right now?
Yeah, it's on the borders between Essex and Hertfordshire, so it's right on the borders.
Oh, very nice. And yeah. So, Chris, let's start our discussion today. The name of your book is The Prism, and please give me the tag line again. I forgot. It's
the tagline, really.
The journey of self-discovery and
unity consciousness.
And unity consciousness. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I lost the page here. It froze up on me.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Anyway, that happens to be one of our favorite topics that we talk about here: the journey of unity consciousness, the awakening process.
Yeah.
It seems that there are so many people around the world that seem to be going through the very same thing. And
they are.
I'd like to give you the opportunity to start off the show with telling us a little bit about your journey and where did it start? Tell us a little bit about your life and a little bit about how this process began to unfold for you.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, before I do that, what I'll say is you're absolutely right. I totally agree. You know, so many people are saying the same thing. There is an awakening. There is a change going on. And we don't have to go very far before we hear that being said. And we see it being action too in day-to-day life in very subtle ways. And certainly when I had sat in meditation and asked my teachers, elders and guides, which is part of the journey, and we'll get into that a bit more, and I had been so upset by the things that, you know, I see going on around the world. And in the next meditation, they took me on the most wonderful astral travel, and they showed me the world. And it brought tears to my eyes of joy, because they said, do you see that world? Do you see the light coming from it? the way they showed me the world, it was as if every time I moved around the world, or at night, and they did that specifically to show me also that the light that comes up out of the planet from all of these different places around the planet is absolutely amazing. It was incredibly bright and incredibly in its millions. And they said, "Do you see that light?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And they said, "That's people. That light coming out of the planet is visible to us." And that light that is coming out of everyone is the love and the hope that they hold within them for peace, love, and unity. And it was tremendous, Bernard. It was absolutely amazing. As incredible, I said, "That's Rio." They said, "Yes." And I said, "But that's the favelas." And they said, "Yes. Do you see the amount of light that is coming from there?" They showed me a whole number of other cities around the world where the light coming out of those cities was incredible, as well as across the vast areas of land outside of cities and towns, huge amounts of people shining a light out into the universe. And it was the love and the hope that they were holding in their hearts for peace, love, and unity. And they said, "Do you see now how much unity there is on the planet? We really need to wake up to the fact that there is so much more unity on the planet than we realize." And it was absolutely incredible. So that's what I want to say about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately for my awakening, my guides took me and showed me all the things that were wrong with the planet. So it sounds like yours was much more joyful. Mine showed me the war and the famine and the hatred and things that needed to be changed. But
yeah,
I guess that's how I work better. I work better with contrast, maybe. I don't know. But I'm so glad that yours was absolutely beautiful, and what a great experience for you.
Incredible, and I've got to say as well, for you to have had that experience is really a testament to you, because person to be able to handle that. And certainly when I see cruelty and barbarism displayed, it affects me so much. And I know that they, will show me the completely different side of life, because it will help me to deal with the sadness that I have in me for exactly that sort of thing, the barbarism and the cruelty that goes on. But really, my journey has been a personal one since a childhood. And I thought all children I was one of those kids that but to me, I thought everybody could see these people that came from nature, and every time I played in the garden, they would come and play with me. So that was really the beginning of my experience of a completely different reality inside this reality.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, to me, they were people. To me, I knew that they came from nature, and to me, there was nothing strange about that. I was certainly aware of them before I became aware of them in a much more a tangible way, because I was one of those children that would spend hours in the garden, and my family thought I was out in the garden on my own, but I was actually, with all my friends from nature.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It was particularly strange, though, as you get a little bit older, because you suddenly realize that there's a whole different world out there that doesn't recognize that sort of thing. So personally, you have to find some way of processing that.
Right. And as a child, what was your way of processing that?
Well, as a child, I accepted it as being very normal. And, and for the fact that nobody else seemed to see them, initially bothered me, but because my friends from nature weren't bothered by it, and I knew they weren't bothered by it, I didn't worry about it too either. You've got to remember I was 4 or 5 years old at the time, so right. We're completely different people at that time, at that age, quite atypically, and it's not uncommon, is it, when we get to an adult age, that there's an aspect of our childhood that in some ways we look forward to going back to, and coming into that re-establishment of those things that we enjoyed as a child can be part of the journey when we're an adult.
And that's the truth. I can relate to that completely on a personal level. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, have you found yourself that there are aspects of your own childhood that that really do shine for you, and you have to consciously make an effort to bring about that energy again, and to re-own that energy again.
Absolutely. For me, it was I don't know if it was early childhood, but perhaps it's fair to say that when I had my, let's say, I call it the second awakening. I had my shamanic vision quest experience in my early 20s, but it was way too much for me to handle, and I was literally torn between two worlds. It wasn't until my late 30s that I had the beginning of my second awakening, and that is when I dedicated myself to the work that I'm doing now. But the feeling was an overwhelming feeling of recognition. It wasn't nostalgia. It was almost a feeling of coming home. And I remember saying to one of my friends, "I feel like I'm 15 again." It was like, like, what happened? Who was that person from 15 to 38? They were crazy, And I felt like myself again. If that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense. I would say pretty much, to a degree, the same kind of time period for me was involved, where I had to go through a whole re-getting to know myself and coming out of an extreme self-loathing. The contradiction of things within life and previous life experiences, and the experiences that I was finding myself in. I was dealing with them in a different kind of way, in a way that I thought we were supposed to in normal life, but it kind of that way of going about things collapsed in on itself. And so part of myself collapsed in on itself too. And what I suddenly realized I'd been doing is I'd been keeping myself in this low vibrational aspect of the prismatic self. And that's what I came to realize had happened to me. And certainly when it came to having the whole aspect guides, it made total sense as to what I had done to myself, because I hadn't consciously chosen to choose something else, something different, something much more authentic and true to the self. And it was a very typical period of my life where I wasn't accepting myself as who I truly was. And of course, that's the clincher, isn't it? It's when we truly accept ourselves for who we are that we can start to develop a baseline understanding of where we're at and start to make the kind of conscious decisions that might enable us to go forward and in a more expansive way, in a more accepting way of self as well as others around us.
Yes, absolutely. And I like what you said, having that baseline understanding of ourselves. And that's something, there's something to be said for that phrase, because when I do feel that even though we've had that moment of awakening, of that epiphany, that clarity, whether it be a moment or a month or even a year of that expansion, it's very easy to fall back into old patterns, and we'll talk about that when we return after this commercial break. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. About the how shall we say, the process of awakening, something that many of us are going through at this time. And Chris was kind enough to write a book about it and is joining us today. Before we went on the break, I had mentioned something, Chris had mentioned something about having a baseline of who we truly are. We were talking about, re-recognizing ourselves, how when I got to a certain age, I kind of snapped out of the fugue of adulthood and remembered who I was, kind of like when I was 15. And before the break, I was just talking about how sometimes, I don't want to say unfortunately or fortunately, because I do believe everything is a part of the unfolding process. But I remember during my and you tell me what your thoughts are on this, Chris. I remember during my vision quest when I was I think I was 24 when I had my vision quest, and that's when the whole world opened up to me, and my guides came and showed me all the ugliness of the world and told me, we must all come back to the source of light, But I remember that before my guides left me, they said, your ego will try to trick you into believing none of this is true. I was like, that was very, very good advice. The ego is a trickster. It will trick you into believing that love isn't true, that your spirit is not true, and whatnot. And I remember saying a little earlier how through my 20s and my early 30s it was a struggle, because here I am on one hand a successful person with a career and whatnot. And yet I knew better. It's like, I know better than doing this, but I'm doing it anyway because society told me I have to do it. But again, what are your thoughts on that whole idea of perhaps I don't want to be negative, but let's say sometimes we kind of backslide a little bit. We fall into the old habits because maybe the ego is tricking us and we don't realize it.
Sure. Certainly, what the elders, teachers, and guides had given me was the importance of finding gentleness. Now, whenever we reach, I guess, a point of peace or contentment or satisfaction about something or another, whatever that is, we can experience gentleness. Now, there are times when gentleness seems to be the thing that's furthest away from us, but it's something that we can relate to, and not to underestimate the power and the importance of gentleness. And certainly when it comes to finding or creating an opportunity for us to get an understanding of some kind of baseline, we have to choose to create a time when we can experience our own gentleness. Now, it might be only for a fleeting moment, or as we do certain rituals or meditation or going out for a walk somewhere or creating some space for ourselves, because let's face it, it's a really important thing for us to do, whether it's daily or weekly or however often we feel we need it or can create it. Experiencing those moments of gentleness is really, really vitally important. And certainly they communicated to me the vital importance of finding that part of self that can experience one's own gentleness. And when we do that, we have a chance, we have an opportunity. Because quite often the amount of noise that goes on around us or in our own lives, in our own heads, in our own, etc. It's it as often as you can, and if you don't know, then make some time to be still, quieten the sound of your mind, and you might just hear your heart speaking to you. You might be surprised by the gentleness of your own heart and the way it speaks to you, and that is the heart that is you. So creating gentleness is really, really vitally important. And certainly when it comes to having those kind of awakenings where we kind of get that sense of expansion of so much, they can be really, really dynamic. But it is part of that prismatic aspect of self. I mean, how many times during the day, Bernard, have you sort of found yourself doing, I don't know, mundane, everyday things, and you're just getting on with it, then all of a sudden you feel a sense of expansion, a sense of a kind of lightness of being, and then all of a sudden it comes back down again and you're back into the mundane aspect of everyday life. But that for that fleeting moment, you've experienced that incredible expansion of self that goes to a completely different place, and then it comes back down again, and you kind of think, well, what was all that about? Well, that's part of the prismatic mechanism of self. It's that fluid, it's that dynamic, that we can be surprised by our own experience of moments like that. And, the other way too, we can be trucking along, going about our day-to-day thing, and then all of a sudden we get hit by something that just kind of brings us down into a kind of trudgy vibration. But being mindful or being aware that happens, and that it's part of a very natural process of the prismatic mechanism of self, means that as soon as we become aware of it, we can start to step into it, and we can start to be part of the conversation of that we have within consciousness of self, and start to exercise consciousness in a very different way.
You're bringing up you're sharing something that's bringing up something within me, because here in the United States, I don't know how bad it's gotten in the United Kingdom, but here in the United States, you just described a commercial for Zoloft, and I'm making fun of the pharmaceutical culture we have here, the antidepressant, and here the society it tries to drill it into your brain that if you're a little bit happy or you're a little bit sad, that's not normal. You have to take a pill for that. And unfortunately, most of our culture is ingrained with all of that. And I don't believe in it at all. I don't believe in it at all. I don't know how much I believe in this whole baloney of bipolar depression or whatnot. I kind of go with what the Native Americans say, that, it's just your spirit trying to find its own true nature. And the way that you're saying it, and I love this, the idea of the prism, again, unfortunately, the day-to-day person would be like, oh, well, that's mood swings. I have to take a pill for that. And we have to really look at the basis of it from the way you're presenting it, from a holistic approach. From the version of the spirit versus the external. That you're allowed to have moments of elation. You're allowed to have moments where you get the wind knocked out of you. Maybe I guess my question to you now, maybe you can go a little bit further into what do you mean by the prism? What is the prism? Where does this come from? You were talking about the prismatic way of looking at things. What does that mean?
Sure. Okay, well, when I was a kid, one of the books we had in the house was one of those kind of books of ancient mysteries, the typical generic children's book full of, incredible, beautiful photographs from around the world of ancient structures, or, all of the kind of the things that you would find in generic ancient mysteries books. And some of the photographs in there were of crystal skulls. And for some reason, I used to absolutely love turning the pages, and I knew that the pages were going to come up soon with the photographs on it, with the crystal skulls, and I would kind of almost enjoy that deferred gratification of knowing it was coming up soon. And I would turn to the pages where the crystal skulls were, and I would just stare at them. There was something incredibly beautiful, something joyful about them. Now, we're kind of led to believe that, skulls signifying death or, something macabre. But every time I saw these crystal skulls, I was just filled with this sense of beauty and awe, and I never really understood what that was about. But later on in life, as I started to develop more and more of a relationship and a better level of communication with my teachers, elders, and guides, they explained to me, this is from a time when knowledge of how to make such a thing was incredibly high in the first instance. To be able to make such a thing, the technical knowledge involved to make it is something. And then the other side of the crystal skulls is what they teach. And that is that there is that prismatic aspect of physical being, but there's a prismatic aspect to consciousness that stretches right the way, that can stretch right the way across time and space. So as my journey began to continue, and I began to become more and more interested in ancient sites around the world, and meditate more and more and more, I was taken on astral travels to some of these places, and I was shown, what we commonly know now. It's pretty common to know that these ancient sites contain crystal, they contain water, and it happens all the way around the world. And that there is a connection between those sites and between the prismatic mechanism that is in consciousness, in nature, in supernature, that is absolutely tangible. Now, certainly, if we look at the golden ages of time, and, people will turn around and say, oh, there never was, and other people say, yeah, no, there was. I'd turn around and say, well, when do you think infinite consciousness began? Do you think infinite consciousness began, I don't know, 250,000 years ago? Of course, infinite consciousness is infinite. So for the length of time the planet has been going, how long do you think there's been consciousness with the planet? It's really not surprising to then open ourselves up to the possibility and the probability that there have been golden ages of time that go way, way back, far, much, much further than any mainstream academic might say. A lot further. So this whole journey of being shown the relevance, really, of the prismatic nature, prismatic mechanism within nature, within supernature, and how it is also present within all of us, in all living things, the consciousness that runs through it, as well as how we can actively be involved in the expansion of consciousness, the exercising of consciousness, and what that means to us on a energetic level, physically, mentally, emotionally, etc., etc. So,
as I'm listening to you describe the prismatic nature of consciousness, I can't help but think about this really how shall I say amusing program that this amusing program that I watched a few days ago, and I forgot what it was called. I think it's called Brain Games,
right?
And he was almost playing that. I don't know if you've seen the ridiculousness of this dress on Facebook. It's a white and green or blue and brown or whatever. And it was all about perception, and it was wonderful because he was doing these illusions of what color is it? It's funny how this dress thing came up as I was watching the show.
Right.
And what he was saying is that color relies on our perception, but he said in reality there is no color, which I found completely amazing.
Right.
And that it's only through these neurotransmitters in our brain and our eyes and the connecting to the optic nerve and
Yeah.
whatnot, and depending on what angle, and I mean, it was just absolutely fascinating, and how
Yeah.
all colors are present at one time, and
Sure.
that's what hit me.
Sure.
That's when I kind of understood the prism, because I was already working on developing the show with you today.
Uh,
It
uh,
hit me. It was like all colors are present at once,
yeah.
and
Well,
it's just a matter of what angle we're looking through the prism,
yeah,
perhaps.
you got it, and as well as the frequency that of our perception at that particular time, and the frequency of the colors as they're manifesting.
Yes.
You know, when I was a school kid, and I bring this up in the book, I got a job in the mail office and of a laboratory for communications and sciences, and I was taking the mail around the offices and dropping it off, and I was like just a school kid in summer holidays, and one of the labs that I went to was for Charles Keogh, who was one of the guys at the forefront of fiber optics. And he would say, he was great. He would say, come and have a look at this. Come and have a look at this. So I'd leave my trolley outside the lab and I'd go in and he'd say, put these goggles on. So I'd put some goggles on, stand behind this screen, and he'd press the button, and there was a whole array of lasers that went across this bench, bouncing off of mirrors and, zigzagging across in this beautiful maze. And he turned to me and he said, we can put information down that light. And I was like, oh, wow, that is really cool.
Wow.
But later on this journey, and through the communications with the teachers, elders, and guides, and them explaining to me about the prismatic mechanism, they explained how information travels through that light, through that. Now, sound will create light, energy will manifest in a whole number of ways, and information travels on those frequencies. Mm-hmm. And as we tune that prismatic aspect of ourselves, we tune ourselves to higher and higher frequencies. And as we do that, we become more and more, we can become more and more conscious of the information that is at that frequency. Now, we are, just because we're here in the physical, we are multidimensional beings, mm-hmm. and we are prone to being susceptible to vibrations at all sorts of different levels. And if we kind of latch on to a subject matter or a topic at a particularly low vibration, we can be susceptible to those things. And there are people out there that thrive on topics and subject matters of a very low vibration, and they thrive on it as far as they're
Absolutely.
concerned. They're having a great time, and they're going along great guns, and to them there's no problem. They haven't turned around and looked at anything specifically. They're just in that energy. And then there are those people that turn around and say, well, actually, I want something different. I need something different. They recognize something in themselves that needs something different. They start to look further. They start to become more open to different bits of information. And all of that adds into that tuning aspect of the prismatic self. And as we become more and more conscious of that, and we start to make choices, which is very important, as we start to make choices about the topics and the subject matters and what it is we are going to have something to do with, and what it is we're going to turn our back on and not get involved in. Because let's face it, there's a huge amount out there that wants to ingratiate themselves in our lives and wants to pull us into their way of thinking or being, particularly, as you said earlier on, with the drug control. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not knocking mainstream medicine, because I know that there are times when it is absolutely vital, and it has its use. But there is a whole aspect of the holistic world and of the natural medicines that isn't, bandied about, but more and more people are waking up to it, which is great. So all the while, anyway, back to tuning the prism. As we become more and more conscious of the fact that what we choose has a vibration, and if we choose things that have a more nurturing vibration, and choosing that is really important. Recognizing it, might take some. Sometimes we have to be nudged, and sometimes we're bumped, and sometimes something in the universe will bump us big time. Mm-hmm. Will bump us big time to kind of nudge us in a particular direction.
I get pulled by the hair and dragged down the hall by the universe.
And having people around us that get it, is really, really important. And choosing those circles, those social circles, and choosing those friendships and choosing those associations is part of being on that journey of being consciously involved in what it is that we are creating for ourselves, what it is that we are open to, what it is that we are putting out, because there's a non-discriminatory, totally unbiased, unsexist, unracist mechanism out there in the wider universe that is the same mechanism, the prismatic mechanism, and what we put out to it as a certain frequency, it will reflect and it will refract. And as we become more and more conscious of how we do that to one another, let alone how we do that to ourselves, we can start to get a handle on the prismatic mechanism as a whole, not just within human consciousness, but right the way throughout the consciousness that exists within nature and supernature. And that's certainly not saying anything derogatory against any aspects of the celestial realm, or anything to do with those kind of archetypes to do with gods and godheads. That's not saying anything against that at all whatsoever. In actual fact, it's in my frame of reference, it's absolutely part and parcel of it, because it's part of consciousness.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Chris. We got to take a short break here, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Just Bernard Show, and we're speaking with Chris Jones. We'll be right back.
And now back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking, our guest today is Chris Jones, and we're speaking about the prism, his book, as well as the concept of what the prism is. And before the break, Chris was describing how our connection with the energies of ourself and the earth is nothing against the idea of gods or godheads or whatnot, and I was agreeing with him. As many of you know, I'm a very outspoken, for lack of a better term, I call myself the atheist pagan, because I believe in nature religion, but I don't believe in dogma, and I'm very anti-dogmatic even within my paganism. I remember there was a period there, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, where I didn't even want to do ritual. I was like, oh, that's just so dogmatic. It's too dogmatic. But something came to me about a year ago, and it was my guides, and I was presented with this wonderful, like, yellow golden energy, and it's like, this is the energy you'll be working with now. Beautiful. And it was funny because I'm hearing a lot of people saying the same thing. The Native Americans are saying it's the golden energy we're working with now. It's like, that's great. And how important it is for us to raise the vibration through group ritual, which could be group meditation or whatnot. So I decided to start a group again, but we're writing our own rituals several days before. It's not dogmatic at all. Yes, we'll use the basics of, Wicca or Native American or something like that, but we write the ritual and it's ours, and there's that soulful connection and individual connection, which is kind of what you're saying, that
Yeah, it's beautiful.
reaffirming of your connection to the divine, whatever that divine might be for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they on that note, they showed me in one of the meditations the groups around the world that are getting together, and they are creating that energy. And they showed me the circles of light that they made, that those groups made, and how they washed out and rippled out across the planet. And when those ripples bumped into the other ripples that were being made, and the waves that were being made by other groups, they created this kind of cross resonation. But because the intent was the same, there was a match in the harmonic, and that created a force multiplier.
Yes.
And that again, a little bit like the ripple or the wave that strikes the wall, and then it creates this wash back. When those frequency ripples and waves all move and meld into one another, they create this huge harmonic frequency that goes right the way around the planet.
Yeah.
And it is making a difference. They explained to me that the intent from the groups of people and the individuals throughout the Earth's history that have done that are all part of, in a very non-linear fashion, part of the ascension process that is happening right now. So every time groups and individuals are sending out that intent as a frequency into the environment, it is absolutely taking part in the ascension process, and everyone is vital. Everyone is intrinsic. Even if somebody feels like they're in solitary, maybe they are in solitary confinement, or they feel like they're isolated in some way. When they sit in that energy and they put that energy out, every single ounce of it counts in from every single person, which is incredible because it means that everybody's part of the mechanism. So if somebody's leading what they might perceive to be as a very isolated life in some ways, the reality is that they're not. Mm-hmm. But because we're encouraged to be in these social groups and to be leading the life, leading the dream, and and it's everywhere, whether it's throughout the media, we're supposed to be almost having a party 24/7. And so for anybody that isn't experiencing that, they can certainly feel like they're missing out on something. But actually, then they're really not they're not removed from the mechanism at all. They're absolutely intrinsic to it.
There's something to be said about what you're saying about let's say the person who's seems to be working alone or whatnot. Yeah. I can't help. Now, I live in a small city in the mountains. I live in the beautiful Roanoke Valley region here in Virginia.
Beautiful.
Love the energy here. The people are pretty much wonderful most of the time. There's always someone to ruin the thing, but that's life. The mayor or the police chief or somebody will ruin the flow of the energy. But the reality of it is that even though I find that the whole idea of not participating, and I call myself non-compliant, I guess is the word I'm using, and I just like to put out there the idea of someone who's not participating in the problem might actually be helping more than somebody who's
Yeah.
active in the problem. Like you said, the media
Sure.
makes everything seem like a party. I look at my friends here in Roanoke, and they're always at some party or some restaurant or some function or this and that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's see how much of the environment is being destroyed for that. Let's see what
Yeah.
corporate leaders are making money off of that.
Yeah.
How much of your time did you have to spend to make the money to go to this thing?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, are we perpetuating the negative vibratory aspects
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
by being so social? And I hope that I've found a balance. I seem to have found a balance so far.
Uh,
But I do say, hey, you know what? To those of you that do not want to play games with society, good for you.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that was that. Do you know what? That is such a perfect thing to say. Part of that, one of the most amazing meditations and astral journeys was when they show me the world and the amount of light that was being emitted by people around the world that believe in peace, love, and unity. Was the fact that there were times when they showed me that there were these single little dots on the planet, and they were in the middle of this space, and there they were, and their light was shining right out into the cosmos, and that was one individual somewhere that could be in the middle of a prairie, in the middle of a jungle, in the middle of somewhere, but there they were, and at the heart of them was this beautiful light that was absolutely visible out into the cosmos. And the teachers, elders, and guides said, you know what? There are people out in the cosmos. There is life out in the cosmos that totally recognizes that there is a beautiful energy going on on the planet. They also recognize that there are a lot of problems and that there are a relatively small number of people who are highly financed that are creating quite a lot of problems and a lot of pollution, as well as a bit of worry. But they said, don't be mistaken by the amount of unity that you actually have on the planet. Mm-hmm. There is a huge amount of unity on the planet, and they want us to recognize that. And they said incredibly, every time people, when we go to sleep, they said, recognize this. Quite often when people go to sleep, they will have a completely different life experience of themselves. They enter a completely different aspect of their consciousness, and without even realizing it, they are working for the greater good. They are in service for one thing or another, and they are doing all sorts of things in their nighttime dream state. Mm-hmm. And they can wake up the following morning and say, well, I don't know what I was dreaming last night, but whatever it was, I was busy. That they can also have the experience during the day. And I've had it myself where I felt out of sorts with myself during the day, and I've wondered why. And in meditation, the teachers, elders, guides, and said, sometimes during the waking stage of the day, when we've got our daytime face on, it is so not who we really are that enough of who we actually are that we've experienced while we're asleep in the dream state bleeds through during the day. And a part of it is still with us. And that there are times during the day where we still have got the daytime mask of self on, but something's jarring. Well, it's that aspect of ourself that is so very different from our daytime self. And they said, if we can be more and more aware of that and bring that authentic self, and the face of self, and the manifestation of self that we're experiencing at night during our sleep time, dream times, through into our waking state, we will have a chance to experience our experiences in a very, very different way.
Wow, you're reminding me of something I haven't thought about in probably 40 years. I just had an epiphany.
Beautiful.
I have a memory that just came back to me and it has to do with what you're saying. I remember as a child, as a small, before puberty.
Yeah.
I remember that during the day, I was very studious. I was very social. I was very I guess well-behaved, for lack of a better term, which I probably wasn't, but I think I was. But but I remember at night something always changed.
Yeah.
I became more creative. I became more expressive. I felt more connected. I felt happier. I don't know if
Yes.
it was just something about the nighttime that I could be
Yeah. Yeah.
relaxed and be myself. Like after it got dark, I felt free.
Yeah.
It was a very strange sensation. I remember that as a child, and I remember waking up like the following mornings, like having a nighttime hangover. You know, like, oh my God,
Uh,
did I play Monopoly for 5 hours? You know, or something like that.
can I
Those
ask
kind
you?
of things would happen. I'd be like, wow, did I say
Okay.
those things? Did I mean
So
those things?
let me ask you a question then, Bernard. Were you the type of child that loved being outdoors during
All
the day?
all the time,
Yeah, yeah, me too.
all the time.
I loved being outdoors. I love being outdoors, and if I was playing in the garden with my friends from nature, I loved it. If I was outdoors, I was happy. At night, when I was indoors and I had to go to bed, there was something in me that knew that a mechanism existed for me to go out.
Hmm.
And I used to wake up as a child, and the first time it happened, my face would be underneath the ceiling. The ceiling of the room would be right in front of my face, and I would freak out, and I would smack back into my body, and the judder would go. And I talk about this in the book. A
Right.
judder would go up through my body as if I'd stepped off a curb, and landed on the heel, misplaced stepped, and the judder would go up through my body. Well, this kept happening night after night until eventually, I used to go to sleep holding onto the side of the mattress, gripping tight with my hands. It didn't make any difference whatsoever. I would still find myself up underneath the ceiling.
Mm.
And I got used to that. And I used to love just floating there. And then I experienced going through the ceiling, and I was away. I was flying across trees and for miles and
Mm.
miles and miles, and I was landing in a field. And in the middle of this big giant field, there was a house on stilts, and I would meet this kid there. And we would play ball, we would kick the ball up into the sky, and we would go flying off after it. It was absolutely joyous, absolutely joyous. Now, I discovered when I was a teen that I'd got a brother who'd crossed over.
Mm.
And it brought back a memory to me. I thought, hang on, I used to stand next to a cot when I was a kid, and I used to see this baby in a cot. And one day the baby wasn't there anymore. And I discovered, sadly, it affected my parents terribly, and they never could talk about it. But I discovered when I was a teenager that I'd got a brother. And it suddenly clicked with me. That was who I used to go and see at night. I used to go to this different realm. Because when I got there, he felt like a brother. He was my brother in my heart. He was my brother. But I found out when I was a teenager, I'd got my brother Andrew. He crossed over when he was a baby, and
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So there I was discovering that astral travel was very real
Yes. Yeah.
as a child. And it's one of the things that I'm keen for parents and guardians to talk about with their children.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's very, very important. If I may, I wanted to share this with you. Another memory popped in. And as you're talking about how much you loved your nighttime, unfortunately, my nighttime was riddled with attacks from witches and demons, and I would have there was this, they called it a babushka. I don't know if you know what that is. Some kind of Russian spirit would come and try to eat my hands every night.
Sure.
I mean, all of these strange, horrible apparitions would appear before me as a child. I found out later that apparently this was something that wanted to take my power or something like that. But
it didn't.
No, it did not. But the wonderful thing is, now this is the positive aspect of the strange paranormal experiences I had as a child, is I also remember having very profound, for lack of a better term, I'll call them magical abilities. I remember wishing things to happen and they would happen immediately. Like my bike chain would break and I'd hold it together and I'd pray and I'd be like, "Oh, please fix," and it was fixed. I remember
Right on.
I knocked over my father's boat. Okay, the boat was up on a trailer. The
Oh,
trailer was on this thing. I knocked it off the stand. Here I am, a
oh,
little 5-year-old kid. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. I'm like, I've got to put it back on. I got to put it back on. I lifted the boat. I put it back on the thing. I mean, just all these amazing
yes.
magical manifestations that I'm like, I don't remember how I did that. I remember being a child
Yeah.
doing readings with playing cards, and I'm like, I never learned how to do readings with playing. I don't know how to do it now. I can
Yeah.
do a tarot reading, but I don't know how to do
Yeah.
a playing card reading.
Yeah.
And I would
Absolutely
do readings
beautiful.
for the neighborhood kids, and it's like, where did that come from? And
Yeah.
again, going
Beautiful.
back to what you're saying, the idea of nurturing children like yourself and myself, I think it's so important when parents
Absolutely.
don't think your kids are strange. Do not think that they need Ritalin or Adderall or whatever.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
showing you who they are, and we really
Yeah.
need to nurture who they are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my parents didn't know how to handle it when I was a kid. I spoke to my mother a while ago and was explaining to her about the experience when the book was coming together, and she said, that's really funny because she said I had said to her and my father one morning the ceiling's too close, and they had thought that it was me saying that the top bunk,
Right, right.
above my head was too close. So my dad took the top bunk bed off, but little did they realise that I actually meant the ceiling.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I'd spent quite a long time being so much in fear of what I was experiencing with that whole business of finding myself floating up underneath the ceiling. Now, if I'd have been in an environment when and been able to say something like that, and my parents been able to say, do you know what? It's quite possible that you're experiencing something that's very, very natural, and that's something called astral travel. And when the mind is
Mhm.
relaxed, and we're in that place of peace and self sovereignty without fear, that we can experience things like that. So absolutely, opening the conversation up and encouraging parents and guardians to talk about that with their children, and teachers to talk about that with their pupils is vitally important, particularly as these earth changes are happening, and we're finding that there's a new type of child being born now.
Oh, yes, I was hoping we were going to bring that up. As we're talking about the prism, we've spoken about the indigo, the rainbow, the crystals.
Yeah, yeah, and it's vital that we that we nurture the positive attributes of those children instead of giving them Ritalin and all of that sort of stuff, or disciplining them heavily because they're difficult to manage and they won't obey and they take too much negotiating. It's really important that we positively nurture them, because the time will come. The teachers, elders, and guides were telling me a time will come when the new rainbow children will be born, and
Hmm.
they're going to be absolutely, really, even more pivotal to the earth changes that are happening at the moment. They'll be even more pivotal to the changes in the future.
I couldn't agree more, and I feel it happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been told I'm an adult indigo. I'm sure perhaps you've been told the same.
Well,
Um,
they told me that some were born earlier,
what do they
before
call it?
the
First wave or
before the names started being bandied
yes,
around, because there needed to be older people and seniors in society at a
yes.
particular stage that would recognize these children in vibration, and they would recognize them for the true qualities that they are, so that these children weren't going to feel so kind of isolated, or
Yes.
particularly if they're made to feel freakish in some way, that they were absolutely reassured and knew that they were safe and that they were in a secure environment.
I can't help but and not to be negative, I'm just making an observation. I can't help but notice a recent commercial that showed up on. We have something called Hulu here, and I watch my sci-fi shows or whatever on there. And a commercial popped up, and it was showing a gentleman, maybe a little bit younger than me. I'd say in his late 30s, and it's showing him multitasking and getting confused and getting angry and whatnot. And then it's something about him going to a high school reunion, and all of a sudden you see Ritalin. Uh, Maybe there's something that you didn't leave behind in high school, and they're referring to attention deficit disorder. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh,
yeah,
so now you want to carry it over into adulthood also.
yeah,
And I can't help but feel, and my gut tells me this is kind of the truth, and I hate to put attention to it, that there is I don't want to say a war, but there is an effort to suppress this type of awakening, enlightenment, and whatnot. I
yeah.
mean, I see it all the time in religion and the doublespeak that happens. It's more hateful than loving in many
Sure,
cases,
sure. But
But
more and more people are waking up and becoming savvy to it,
yes,
which
and that's the good
and
part.
and that is absolutely vital. And certainly with the new children being born, there is a savviness to them, and by them being positively nurtured and positively empowered, will encourage them to believe in the validity of their savvy.
And I
So
think
that
that's the important part.
yes, yeah,
Absolutely, to have the
absolutely.
courage to be who they are, basically.
Yeah, and was that person in the advert an actor? More than
More
likely.
than likely,
More
absolutely.
than likely. One thing we've really got to remind ourselves of is that while business corporations might focus on marketing opportunities, there is actually something else going on which is much, much bigger, and that is the universal law of opportunity. And that is certainly a vibration that more and more people can get involved in and actively be recognize how much they co-create with the universe as they shift frequencies and as they shift towards more and more higher vibrations and more conscious vibrations and more conscious interaction with their own consciousness as part of the awakening process. The law of opportunity, the universal law of opportunity, will can give more and more people the chance to see and recognize the kind of games that are being played, and hopefully find ways and support networks to allow them to go forward in more and more expansive ways, and help others to go more and more forward in expansive ways too.
Yeah, you reminded me of this visualization that I had back before I started the Global Illumination Council, and
Ah,
it was that feeling of, and it stuck with me through my 20s and 30s. I don't know how it was for you, but I remember it was always there in the background, and it was this feeling of that stranger in a strange land, like, am I the only one who sees this?
yeah,
And and I
yeah.
remember having this vision in my head. I was walking down the streets of New York, and it's and at that point, I hadn't been to New York as an adult, but the vision was I'm walking down the streets of New York City. They're very congested, very crowded, but all of a sudden I was raised up to where my head was raised above the crowd.
Oh,
And I
wow.
looked around me, and there were other people whose head was raised above the crowd. And
Wow.
we all looked at each other, and it's kind of like we all recognized each other, like, you get it? You get it,
Yeah,
right? You get it. Yeah, yeah, I get it. You get it. Yeah, I get it. And it
brilliant.
was like this recognition of I hate to use the word, the awakened people, and
No,
uh,
sure,
and
sure.
that's what kind of motivated me to start doing the work that I'm doing. I'm like, I need it for myself. I need to find more people who think and feel and see, have
Yeah,
the clarity that I have, and start bringing us together where we can begin to work together and hopefully support others who are going through this process.
yeah,
It was almost like an awakening support group in the beginning,
yeah,
but that was the motivation, and I feel that with so many of us now, thank goodness for the internet and whatnot, it's almost as if we're only an island unto ourselves by choice at this point, because we really
Absolutely.
have the ability to reach out to other people who are going through the same experiences
Yeah.
and have written about it. You're putting you have a book out on it. Of course, they can rate you or read
Yeah,
more
yeah,
about your
sure.
work and whatnot. So that's the good news. Absolutely.
That
And
is absolutely perfect. It really is. The teachers, elders, and guides really do want us all to recognize the fact that we're not alone with this, and that they really do support. They're so keen to actively support every single one of us in this. So absolutely none of us need to believe that we haven't got what it takes to be actively involved, because we are actively involved, because we are here. If we consider the length of time that the Earth has been here, and, there's a great myth of immaturity bandied about around mainstream academia to do with how long humans or Homo sapiens sapien have been on the planet.
yeah.
All of us have a very, very long heritage, and I feel so blessed to be on the planet right now while you're here on the planet, and while a whole number of other people that absolutely believe in peace, love, and unity are on the planet too. I feel very, very blessed to be here right now. That throughout time, our heritage goes back a long, long way. I mean, if you consider the last global cataclysm, whenever that was, and people can argue the date, that there were people that survived, and we are the offspring of them. Today we are the offspring of them. Now you can imagine that those people that survived when it happened, that they were the offspring of the people from the time before. Now, maybe the time before, there was another global cataclysm. We go back a long, long way.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more after we return from the break. You're listening to the Just Bernard Show, and we are speaking with Chris Jones. We'll be right back.
And now back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We were having a great conversation about the awakening process, the prism, and so much other metaphysical topics with our guest today, Chris Jones. And before the break, Chris, you had mentioned something about the idea or the fact. For me, it's a fact that, humanity has been around much longer. And forgive me, but I'm going to do a plug here for a moment. I'm going to plug next week's show for the very reason that I'm going to be having author and speaker Timothy Wiley is going to be joining me live next week. And he's been in contact with an angel who says humanity's been around for millions of years.
Yeah.
And this is going to be very interesting to hear what he has to say and what the angels have been telling him. So I agree. I completely agree. And whether you believe in channeling or whether you're in contact with angels or whatnot, common sense would tell you that we have definitely been around longer than, well, first of all, than 5,000 years, like the Bible says, but even more so than, 10,000, 20,000, whatever, 50,000 that mainstream archaeology is trying to tell us. I think they've gone as far as maybe 2 million years ago, but our planet is so much older, and it would just be common sense. That there has been life here even before the dinosaurs came along. Who knows?
Well, you've only got to look at the term infinite consciousness and consider infinite consciousness. For a planet like we have here, it's really very logical that absolutely life goes back much, much further than we've been led to believe. So is it? It's no wonder, really, that there's a few institutions out there that will undermine the heritage, the human heritage. They will undermine human empowerment. They will undermine, well, even as you were saying earlier on about the Ritalin advert for the person going to college, don't forget something at college. Any means to undermine the potential for people to step into their peace and into their power. But surely any logical person would, if they're sitting quietly with themselves, they would recognize something in themselves that actually, their human heritage goes back a long, long way. Much, much further than we're led to believe at school or in the mainstream, academia.
Absolutely, and I have to joke a little bit. There's this thing called what was it? In Florida, they have I think it's called the Holy Land experience,
right?
And they have people from the Bible literally writing the dinosaurs because it's only 5,000 years ago. So they're trying to perpetuate this mythology that we're only here 5,000 years, and they're dinosaurs. There are bones to prove they're dinosaurs. They're only 5,000 years also, and just the whole idea. It seems like we're running away from the truth, or at least society. I'm not saying you and I, God's know that we're not running away from the truth, but the reality of it is that it's ingrained so harshly upon us, whether it be through school, through media, through religion, through our peers, even through mainstream science. So I love the fact that you're saying that anyone who will sit and be quiet and listen to their inner self and just to be quiet enough to think about these things, that's really the answer. And I used to be a member of Occupy. I still consider myself a member of Occupy, but I was a facilitator for the Occupy Roanoke group here. And I remember the first day I showed up. It was the first march, and this is a small town. We had about 300 or 400 people. We were happy with 300 or 400 people marching, but my sign said "Occupy Within." And it's very strange because they stored all the signs for the next day because, we were occupying. So we were going to be there. I think we did 3 days the first time, and then we started doing like every other day or just the lunchtime or whatnot. But when I went back the next day, my sign was gone. Someone had thrown it out. And I was like, why would someone do that? I'm like, are they that afraid of looking at themselves? That's the first thing I thought of. Are they afraid of looking at our part in all of this? Because even though I might be, I still consider myself an activist. I consider myself a spiritually founded activist within my spirituality. I feel the need or the compulsion to make the world a better place. I wholeheartedly feel that way.
Yeah.
But to say that we have no responsibility for the way the world is now, if we are unhappy with the outside, we need to look at ourselves and what have we done to create this place where humans are being oppressed, where the banks are taking over the world and people are losing their living, their homes, their jobs, and homelessness is at an all-time high, and now homelessness is becoming there's a war on the homeless. I don't know what's going on there, but I've seen a few things in England. But here in the United States, there's a war against homeless people.
Yeah, sure.
And it's the governments and the corporations that have put them there. So how did we allow that? How did we get here? I can't help but feel we have a certain role in all of that, in the way that we're feeling, and our lack our lack of giving ourselves permission to go within to see who we truly are.
Yeah, it's a long list, really, and a number of years that whole process of socially engineering all of those layers within society has been happening, and certainly when it comes to making changes. The teachers, elders, and guides were saying, look, while we see what's happening in that way. There is so much that people can do, and if they can't actively get involved in that during the day, and it's not always possible for people to actively get involved in that during the day because of the circumstances or whatever, but changes are happening, and as people become more and more aware of what needs to change, rather than turning a blind eye to it or just not having anything to do with it. Once it's being recognized, it goes into into the pot, as it were, for change. But recognizing it is really important. And what you said, what you had written on your sign was absolutely beautiful. Occupy within. They've said to me, the teachers, elders, and guides have said, when we become aware of that inner self, and we step into the peace and the power that is within self, and certainly recognizing the very long heritage that Homo sapien has on the planet, can certainly go a long way towards us realizing, well, actually, do you know what? There's a lot in mainstream academia that has been telling me that we've only been here 5 minutes. Actually, we've been here a lot longer. And as that becomes more and more recognized, and we step into our peace and in our power, we can start to step more and more into an authentic sense of self. And that, as a vibration, does go out into the environment. And when we're sharing that vibration amongst more and more people, there is a force multiplier, just purely because it is true and it's happening. And you imagine that force multiplier developing even more, how much more there is that is going to change.
Oh, I agree.
And will change.
I agree.
So occupying the self is, really, really central to it. And everybody is intrinsic in that. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from.
Yes. My thought is, and this is my hypothesis in all of this, and this comes from what my guides say and from what my experiences are, is that once we begin to change the way that we think, it is inevitable.
Yes.
Inevitable that the outside world starts to change. And what I mean by that, I don't mean to ignore what's happening. I'm not ignoring what's happening to the Palestinian people. I'm not ignoring what's happening with the famines and the wars and the homeless.
No, you're right.
But to change my mind and saying that this is unacceptable. These people are me. These are my family. These are my human family. And imagine what kind of world we would live in if the quote unquote, the 99% of humanity really believed that, saying everyone is my family, that homeless man is my family, that Palestinian is my family, that those people being bombed are my family. It would show in our actions, and we would be very aware not to perpetuate it any further. I feel when we're living in a genuine state, and I think that's what it all comes down to, is being a genuine spiritual being within this corporeal body.
No, I'm totally feeling what you're saying. One of the and I talk about this in the book too, that while there are those meditations and those astral travels where they take me out into the universe, into the cosmos, I ask them if they would let me see something of the minute, something of the quantum realm. And they took me down and down and down and down into the quantum realm. And it was, there was a bit of me that was expecting, I don't know, some kind of sense of claustrophobia, but it wasn't claustrophobic at all. It was huge. It was massive. I had a sense of the universe from that quantum realm. I could sense the planets. I could sense the outside right down there in the quantum realm. And I said, this is odd. This isn't what I expected at all. There was an incredible moment when I got to a part of the quantum level when I suddenly realized that what I was seeing in front of me was and it was sort of visualized as tiny little dots, tiny little particles in the ever so small, the realms of the ever so small, but yet it was my breath, and every time I had a thought, it moved, and every time I attempted to reach out towards it, I was already touching it, and it was touching me, and I suddenly thought, well, it is me, and then I thought, well, if it is me, then I am it. And I said to the teachers, elders, guys, well, if I am it and it is me, then everybody else must be here as well, and all of their thoughts and all of them must be here as well. And there was this incredible feeling that came over me that was from them, that was like a recognition of where it is that we make changes happen. That when we get into that quantum realm, and there are aspects of our energy field that goes into that quantum realm, and when we make those changes, or we feed that vibration of energy into the quantum realm, it is out of the quantum realm that the changes occur in the macro. So just as you were saying, when we recognize that thought, and we recognize all of those sorts of things, that the changes start to occur, and they absolutely do. They go into the quantum fabric, and they come out of the quantum fabric. I don't know if I thought I was perceiving it as a physical realm, because to me it was physical down there, and it was odd, because on the one hand it was hologrammatic, but on the other hand it was physical too. It was both light and particles, but there it was, and it was me, and I was it, and so was everyone else.
Right.
and I thought, gosh, this is where we are one in the quantum, and it's where change happens as well. It is out of that quantum fabric that we can see things manifest in the macroverse.
And now I wonder, Chris, is there? We have about 10 more minutes left, if that, actually a little bit less. What are some? I hate to use the word effort, or perhaps practices that people could do to become more aligned with this type of energy, or become more aligned with their awakening process. Is there anything that you do? What have you found something that works better for yourself?
Yeah, gentleness. If you can create a time and a space where you can experience your gentleness and choose gentleness. Now, I love, smelly smells and candles and incense. I love those. So sometimes I haven't got, those around. Mm-hmm. But if we can choose an environment for ourselves, or find a space for ourselves and experience gentleness, encourage ourselves to experience gentleness, and see what we find. It's going to be different for every single person. It's what's going to manifest out of there. It's going to be very unique to the vibration of that person, in terms of that prismatic vibration of self in that moment. But if I was going to recommend anything, I would say practice creating a moment for yourself where you can discover your gentleness, and allow your gentleness to pervade all of your body, and just allow yourself to go into your gentleness, and don't necessarily expect anything or place any kind of aspiration or target or achievement for anything in particular to occur. Because that will happen as you find it. But yeah, I would encourage people to find time to experience their inner gentleness, and and prepare to be surprised for what you find, and it'll be good. Really allow gentleness to become you, and for you to become your gentleness.
And I like that you said it's a little bit different for everybody, because I feel that so many people feel that, oh, well, I need to learn to meditate. Well, meditation itself is different for other people. There are dozens of ways to meditate: contemplation, Zen meditation, and chanting, mudras. To me, I mean, an artist is meditating when they're painting, or when you're being creative, you're meditating. So, I mean, there are many ways to meditate. And then there are others. I used to say, take 5 minutes just to relax. And then someone said to me, well, to me, relaxing is going to the bar and drinking a bottle. I'm like, well, that's blowing off steam. That's not relaxing. I blow off steam too. But relaxing, in my interpretation, and I think it might align with what you're calling gentleness, is stillness. For me personally, I like quiet. I like to close the windows. I have no music, no television, just complete silence, and I just lay there in the silence. But it's very interesting how many people can't handle silence. They don't want to be alone with their thoughts.
Well, a number of people have said that to me too about meditation. Oh, I'd love to meditate. But I don't have the time, but there are a number of different ways to meditate, and I always try to say to those people, well, just try this one thing, and it's gentleness. Choose to seek your gentleness. But don't expect anything, but allow yourself to relax, allow yourself to choose whatever it is you choose where you can experience your gentleness. And you'll know it when you feel it. You'll recognize it. You'll go, oh, yeah, that's my gentleness. And as you say, for somebody, it might be while they're doing some art or some creativity of some form, some sculpting, some whatever. They're in that state of being where they're experiencing gentleness. And I would say recognize that feeling. Learn to recognize that feeling of gentleness. It's really useful, because you can find there are times when things are all up in the air and you're trying to juggle a number of different things all at once, and then something will come into the inspiration to do with reminding you about gentleness. And if you can find that aspect of consciousness within yourself that recognizes your gentleness, it can allow you to carry on doing the things that you want to do, but from a completely different head and heart space. So gentleness is key, and certainly when I've asked my teachers, elders, and guides about that, they've always tried to tell me, don't underestimate gentleness, and don't underestimate friendship.
That's beautiful.
A very simple thing, and I say this in the book. They talk about this in the book about friendship. They say, don't underestimate friendship. It's a very strong energy right the way throughout the cosmos.
Oh yeah.
And when we bring simple friendship to the fore on this planet, we're doing so much more than we realize in the way of increasing the vibration towards the sorts of levels that can create such great change right the way across the planet, just with simple friendship.
That's amazing. I'm thinking that, the moment you connect with one person, you're connecting with the entire planet, because that person knows the other person that knows the other person, and somehow, some way, there is that, what's that, 8 degrees of separation? Well, here's the 7 billion degrees of separation, but by connecting with that one person, you're connecting with all of humanity, if you think about it.
And everyone, whether they realize it or not, everyone connects into the quantum.
Yes.
So when you find that connection with someone and create friendship, that energy goes right into the quantum fabric. And the more and more energy that goes right into the quantum fabric of that nature, you can imagine the kinds of effects that it has in the macroverse. And that's two very simple things: gentleness and friendship.
That's wonderful, Chris. We have to wrap it up right now. Do you have one sentence you could share with us that you were about to start?
No, that was it really.
Okay. That's a great place to wrap it up, because it's a beautiful message to leave us with. And let me just let everybody know that you can find out more about Chris and follow up on our talk today at is it if tell me if I'm correct, Chris Jones dash author.cu.uk.
Yeah, that dash is a horizontal dash. It's the
Yes.
hyphen. Yeah,
Hyphen.
Chris
There you
Jones.
go.
Yeah, that's it. Chris Jones hyphen.co.uk.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
And
you.
it's been such a pleasure. And everyone, you can find out more about my new website at bernardalvarez.com. We will see you next week. We love you guys. Thank you.
Love you.